Okay, today we're going to add grading to our 2501 model for the sleeve. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out what our grade rules are going to be. We're going to use the same breaks as last time, so a 1-inch grade for the 6 to 10, a 1.5-inch grade from the 10 through the 16, and a 2-inch grade from the 16 to the 20. The rules numbers are here listed on this image. So we start at 10. We finished our grade rule table last week at 9. And we go 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. The interesting part about the sleeve is that our origin point is right in the middle. It's on the bicep line through the center of the sleeve. That means that no point on our sleeve is going to have a 0, 0 grade rule on the perimeter. It also means that our positives and negatives are going to have to flip. So depending on if we're in the positive quadrant, positive negative quadrant, negative negative, or negative positive quadrant, we will have to decide if our x's or our y's are going positive or negative for the smaller or larger sizes. These right here are our breaks that we're going to use to determine what our rules should be. So we'll start with rule number 10. Actually, so you have a new tab in your grade rule table template on Brightspace. So bodice is in the first tab, sleeve is in the second, and you have rules 10 through 16. So we're going to start filling these out. Okay, so 10. So again, when we're figuring out these rule numbers, we're going from origin point to that particular grade point, and we're seeing which slash lines we cross over. So when we start with the 10, if we look at the x movement, my 10 is on the y-axis, so that means my x movement is going to be 0. So my x for rule number 10 is going to be 0, okay, for all sizes. So just like with the bodice, when we have a part of our sleeve, that part of our pattern, whatever it is, on the x or the y axis, there is no movement there. Okay, we don't want our bicep line to go up and down. The sleeve will grow at the sleeve cap and at the bottom of the sleeve. Okay, and our bicep line stays center, so our origin point does not move. For our Y movement, we are going from origin point, crossing this top slash line and this side slash line. So that's this line right here and this line right here. So for our Y movement for the 1-inch grade, we have a 16th and a 16th. For the 1.5-inch grade, we have a 16th and an 1/8. And for the 2-inch grade, we have an 1/8 and a 1/4. Okay? So that means we have an 1/8, 3/16, and 3/8 for our Y movements. Now for positives and negatives, so this point is in the negative Y quadrant. That means when we're growing larger, we're going outside of the piece. We're moving down, which is the negative Y direction, which means our smaller sizes will have positive values and our larger sizes will have negative values. Okay, so that is going to look like this: positive 1/8, positive 1/8, positive 3/16, negative 3/16, negative 3/16, negative 3/8, negative 3/8. Okay. Now, for my 11, for the X movement, I'm leaving my Y-axis. So I'm going from origin point, which is my Y-axis. I'm crossing over this bottom slash line. From this image, I can see that that bottom slash line is a 1/16 of an inch for all sizes. So my value will be a 1/16 for all sizes. In terms of positive and negative, this is my negative quadrant of the graph, which means when I'm growing larger, my sleeve is getting longer in the X direction. It's moving to the left. And we know that the left direction is negative, which means, again, for my smaller sizes, I'm going in the positive direction, and for my larger sizes, I'm going in the negative direction. So I will have, for x, positive a 16th, positive a 16th, positive a 16th, negative a 16th, negative a 16th, oops, negative a 16th. Sorry. Okay. And then for my x movement, okay, again, I'm going from my for my y movement, I'm going from my x-axis and I'm going to this point right here. So you notice the sleeve has this extra slash line that goes through the cap that doesn't go through the bottom. So for the bottom Y movement, I'm only counting this slash line right here, which is going to be a 1/16 of an inch for all sizes. In terms of positives and negatives, again, I'm in the negative quadrant, meaning when I'm getting larger, my direction is down, which is negative, and when I'm getting smaller, my direction is up, which is positive. So I'm going to have the exact same values that I have here in my y. Okay, so I'm just going to copy these over. Okay. All right, so for rule 12 is basically the inverse of 11. So the values will be exactly the same. Because again, I'm going from the center of my sleeve to this point now, but you see that these slash lines are symmetrical on the either side of the sleeve. So my x and y values will be the same, however my positives and negatives are going to be a little bit different. So for my x, the values will be exactly the same and the positive negatives will be the same because I want my sleeve bottom to stay parallel. However, now I'm in the positive y quadrant instead of the negative y quadrant, which means when I'm getting larger, I'm going in the up direction, which is positive values, and when I'm getting smaller, I'm going in the down direction, which is negative values. So my x will be exactly the same for 12, and my y will be the same values, but inverse positive negatives. So I'm just going to enter in my negatives here and take out my negatives for the larger sizes. So this is kind of what we typically assume when we're growing. We assume we're adding values, right? And when we're getting smaller, we assume we're removing values. So that's the way I like to think about these positive and negative quadrants, is if we're in the positive quadrant, larger sizes will have positive values and smaller sizes will have negative values. But as soon as one of those x or y's turns negative, the positive and negatives are going to do the inverse of what we expect them to do. Okay. So for 13, we have once again the inverse of 10. So we already know we're on the y-axis, so our x is going to be 0. I'm going to copy 0 from here, okay? But we also know that my y value is going to be the same as my 10, right? Because I did this slash line and this slash line to get to 10. To get to 13, I have this slash line and this slash line. But I'm now in the positive y quadrant, which means my larger sizes will be positive and my smaller sizes will be negative. So I'm going to copy this whole rule and paste it. Oops. Okay. But I'm going to invert my positives and negatives in the y only, right? Because my x hasn't changed. I'm on the x-axis still. but my y is now, I'm in the positive y quadrant, whereas the 10 was in the negative y quadrant. Okay. Rule 14 is at my sleeve cap before I hit this vertical slash line here. So even though I'm off my y-axis, I haven't yet hit a slash line in the x direction. So my x is going to continue to be 0. Okay, I'm going to copy this over. For my y, I now am only crossing this first slash line in the sleeve cap. So I'm going from 0 and crossing this first one, which down here we know is a 16th of an inch. So for the 1 inch grade, it's a 16th. For the 1.5 inch grade, it's a 16th. And for the 2 inch grade, it's an 1/8 of an inch. And I'm in the positive y quadrant, which means the positives and negatives will be what I expect them. Well, positive for the larger sizes, negative for the smaller sizes. So I'm going to enter negative a 16th, negative a 16th, negative a 16th, positive 16th, positive 16th, and then I switch to an 1/8 of an inch for that last size break. Okay, so for my 15 rule, I have an x movement. I'm moving from 0 past this slash line to this point. So I need to include this 1/8 of an inch slash line. This is a standard movement, so it's the same for all sizes. So I'm going to do an 1/8 of an inch, positive for my larger sizes, because I'm now in the positive x quadrant, negative for my smaller sizes. So I have negative an 1/8, negative an 1/8, negative an 1/8, positive an 1/8, positive an 1/8, positive an 1/8, positive an 1/8. And my y, I'm now on the x-axis, so my y is going to remain 0. Okay. My final rule is rule 16. It's going to be the inverse of 14. So again, my x is 0, and my y is going to be the same values as my 14. But the negatives and positives will be reversed. Okay. Now our next step is to put these into AccuMark. So we're going to go back to AccuMark Explorer. We're going to find our rule table we already created last week, and we're going to double click it to open it. Okay. All of this is already filled out. We don't have to do anything here. We're going to go to the Rules tab. We're going to make sure that we're in Base Up Down Incremental. Okay. And we're going to add our rules. So we have 10 through 16. Okay. And we're going to input those same values from our table into this grade table. Okay, so I have 10 through 16 filled out. I'm going to go back to my model. I have my grading applied for my bodice. I don't have a grade rule table applied here. I can tell by hovering and seeing that there's no 12 here. I can also right-click Piece Properties and see that the rule table is not my rule table. So I'm going to go to Grade, Assign Rule Table, choose my sleeve, find my rule table, and say OK. Now I just have to go to Modify Rule Number, go around my piece, remember to click and drag, and enter my grade rules that I just created. So I have 11, 12, 13. I went ahead and put 14 on and 16 on the notches. And now I'm going to go Control G so that I can see my grade graded nest.